which is Juno Analytics. The strapline for which data insight tells us that it's Juno data, and it's the looking at that data in a better way. What we're hoping to do this morning is give you a little bit of background about what the product is. And then for the main part, we're going to try and create a report in the time that we have. And if successful, we're going to create a graph as well. And then we're going to return here for questions and answers. So what is Juno Analytics? It's a data analysis utility. Obviously, for looking at your Juno data, we record comprehensive data in Juno. Every single transaction for return style is recorded. So it's an opportunity to analyze that wealth of information. We use Seal Report Builder, which is an industry standard platform. There are others available that we can provide the solution in. We've had comments from people about Crystal, about Tableau, about Power BI, possibly others. So it would be possible for us to provide this in another platform. We just have to have a bit of dialogue with you and a somewhat longer lead time to implement each one initially. Juno Analytics is a web-based environment, so it's multi-user, obviously, and multi-platform. And it's suitable for all types of users. So that's an important point. It means that if you are an institution that struggles to get IT resource, possibly, or data analysis resource, and it falls to you to get data out of Juno, perhaps you're not a software or code writer yourself, then analytics is absolutely right for you. It can be very beneficial. But if you are that IT resource, if you are that data analysis resource, then it's useful to you too, because analytics works on multiple levels. So an IT specialist will be able to get more out of it and more extensive and more complex solutions out of it as well. So it probably works for all types. For the purpose of this morning's practical, we are sort of doing the former. We're going to work on a non-scripting basis to try and create our report. So what does it do? It analyzes historical information that's all recorded, as I've mentioned, and real-time data such as current occupancy you can extract as well. Those reports can be shared to other users, and they can be extended to dashboards as well, which we'll see when we look at the product. It's fully user configurable, and there's no real limit to how many reports you can actually have. And you could also incorporate third-party data, so it doesn't have to be restricted to Juno data. We can put in data from the LMS or any other system to build up a bigger picture of student engagement. So I'm just going to drop out of the presentation at this point and take you to the product. Right, you should have seen my screen change. You should now be looking at a login page. Can someone nod their head? Barney, nod your head. Are you looking at my login page? Brilliant. So obviously being web-based, there is authentication to go through. So we just link this into your existing, your existing authentication process through LDAP, for example. And then it takes you into a home page. So we have landed on a report page. There is a top bar here with a few options on it. The first option on the left-hand side toggles us from this report view into a dashboard view. And we'll come back to the dashboard view a little bit later on, but we'll switch back just for the moment. You have other options here. You can manage the folders. So you might have noticed I have a personal folder. So I can create reports that are just for me. And we have shared folders. So I can create a report that then everybody else can use. And that's all completely manageable. We have a profile option, which allows me to choose my language of choice. And it allows me to choose what my landing page is when I log in, which is why I'm currently set. I currently land on the reports page, but I can change that if I want to. So this list here, you might recognize some of these names. What we've done with Juno Analytics is we have ported across all the reports that exist in the Juno client. So you don't necessarily have to use the Juno client at all anymore. So some of these names you'll recognize. If we go down to usage, for example, we can run that. I'm just going to move the video screen. You may recognize the usage report. I know it's popular with a lot of you. I'm just going to change the date to the 30th of March and give that a run. I don't have any transactions in April, so I'll need to fiddle with the date a little bit this morning. So you may well recognize this report as the standard usage report, let's say, that already exists. So that's all in there. There is a useful information bar across the top here. We're in report mode. Information messages I haven't found a great use for, but results is useful. We can export our report. We can print it if we want. We can certainly create a CV for it. Again, videos are in the way. So we can export our data. We can then analyze that in some third-party product or open it in Excel, whatever it is that we want to do. When you run a report, it opens in a new tab. That'll always allows you to drop back to the home screen. I can close that one, can't I think? Drop back to the home screen and run another report. It always allows you to go back to one of the reports that you've already run and just check it again. So back on the home screen, I'm now going to minimize these videos because they are still in the way. We have things like usage statistics, so we can actually provide chart information rather than just a table of numbers. So again, if I choose, excuse me, if I choose 30th of March, run that, we can get a graphical report out quite easily rather than just a table of data. With any graphical presentation, when you hover on the element, it actually gives you information. Now on this particular pie chart, we've got the information printed as anyway, but the point is that you get that information when you hover on the element regardless. So that could be very, very useful. So what we're going to do now is create a report of our own. So normally what we do is click on New and go from there. I have actually made a start. So we have one called Web1 Graph here. When I run it, I get a result set like this at the moment. So how have I done that? So all I've done to start off with is drag a few fields across. So this is our report builder pane. On the left-hand side, we can see all the Juno tables. You do need to know a little bit about table construction within Juno to be able to use this, obviously. That's something we can cover a little bit in training, of course. But the expectation is that you'll know your way around a little bit. You'll know, for example, what the transactions table is. So all I've done to start off with is drag 4 likely fields across into this first pane. And because there are a lot of transactions, I've stuck in a timestamp that makes sure that I only get most recent transactions. With regard to these dates, that was just a question of setting up a couple of parameters here in the options. So when you run that, as we saw, we get this result here. What we can do with this result is we can do a few things. It's currently sorted by member number. We can sort it by any of these headings, such as timestamp would obviously be a good choice. We have got 2,000 results, so they're paged, of course, for us if you want to page through, but we could also choose to view a greater number of rows. And we also have a filter, so if you want to look at something particular, let's take 219, then we can filter down. It's a very responsive filter that we've got there as well. So we're looking at raw data there. We're looking at each row was a single transaction. So the thing we might want to do is actually start compiling something. So we're going to need to count something up. We're going to need to change a few things here. We're going to get rid of member number because that's reasonably unique. We're going to get rid of timestamp because that's obviously to the second. So we need to get rid of that. But the good news is there is a timestamp day field in the transactions report, so we can put that in. And our graph will then hopefully give us an x-axis, which is the date. I'm going to remove direction as well. We're going to therefore count ins and outs in our report, but it will just give us a little bit more information, so that's fine. And I am going to extend the date because I've only got 2 days at the moment. I need to extend that. So I'm going to move the start date back up to about a month ago. And let's give that a run. And let's sort it by timestamp. And this is beginning to look better. This is beginning to look like the start of our graph. We only have 6 records now for the 1st of March, and each one is a different category 1 value. So the only thing we're really missing here is actually the count for each row. So let's just drop that in. This is the 3rd pane over here. This is a pane we haven't used yet. So if I just take a suitable field and make sure we're doing the right thing. We don't want to sum them, we just want to count them. And let's run that. And we now have a count. So 161 is the number of BRB09 categories that came in through returns or out on the 1st of March. So this is now just about ready to convert to a graph. We have the makings of a graph here, really. So how do we do that? So we drop back to our report builder again. Again, this is the pane that does all the clever stuff. So we need to change how this is presenting. So we have some chart options down here. I'm just going to go straight to NVD3 and change that to a line graph. We're also going to choose our timestamp day as our axis, of course, because we want our report to, the x-axis to be the date, of course. And if we just do that, then our graph will actually just show us a single line and it will show a full occupancy for each day. But we actually want to split it down by category 1. So what we do is we set the chart axis on category 1, we set that to splitter as well. Let me just check that I've done everything here on my list. We're going to remove data tables. It just deletes the data from the end result as well, because we don't want a whole list of data alongside the graph. And we could put in a title here as well. Oop. Try running that. So here's our graph. Here's our day of the month from the 1st of March onwards. Here's our key. So these are our courses that we're running. We're quite a small university. We only run 6 courses. And these are the transactions that apply on each day. And it's the usual hover over any single point and you get a full list of data. Those numbers down there, the 178s and so forth, they're the numbers you would have found, of course, in the table that we had just a moment ago. So that's looking great. I'm going to save that and close this report builder now. And we now have a report that we can run anytime. I can click on it. There it is. And we also have a report that we can drop into our dashboards. So let's drop back to dashboards. We looked at them very early on, haven't looked since. So there's a bit of room here for another widget. These are called widgets. So let's see if we can't add the graph that we've just created. There it is, webinar 1 graph. So let's add that. It's likely to not quite get them in the sequence that we want them, which is fine because you just drag them. I'm going to go to full screen. You'll also need to just adjust the size here a little bit as well. So let's put in 600, let's put in 440, just reshape it a little bit. So here now is our dashboard. Here is the graph we've just created in our dashboard, which we can publish and release. So that's all there is to it, basically. So let's just wrap up back to the presentation. So in summary, we have LDAP authentication to log in. We host obviously the Juno reports that already exist, that you already have in Juno, and we have some additional reports, additional reports that you can add. You can access those reports on demand by going into the product and running them. But there's also a scheduler, which we haven't really had time for, but we can export on queue to a file or indeed to an email as well. So that is Juno Analytics, everybody. And we're through to questions.
Thanks. Sorry, it's Alan talking now. Thanks. Got quite a few questions, probably too many to deal with just now. So I'll just pick some out and we'll look to reply to the rest of the questions and supply the reply to everybody, really. But just to pick some out, one question, you mentioned that the connections to the LMS are supported, and the question was which LMSs, Kevin?
Well, it would be a data connection. Pascalis, you need to unmute yourself, please, if you wouldn't mind. But it would be Hi.
I already tried to answer. It's going to be LMSs that are based on, they have an underlying database system, like SQL or MySQL or Oracle. All of these LMSs that have those systems. I'm afraid you won't, you won't be able to pull data from Alma like an API. All those web-based APIs that won't allow us to connect to whole data sets. So it's not possible to connect with Alma for now. But you can also connect with static files like CSV or Excel files, or any other database system that supports basic ODBC. So basically any SQL-based or static file system.
So any system that doesn't allow data access, so long as you could extract some data into some other form, then we'd be able to connect to it, and you could take advantage of Juno Analytics.
Okay, another question. Can reports be scheduled and sent by email?
Yes, absolutely. We didn't quite get time for that. But just back in that report builder, there was a third tab called schedule, and you would just select that. And exactly that, you can schedule it to create a file and drop it into a particular folder, or you can schedule it to be emailed at a particular time, and the time and day.
Okay, there's a question about where we're up to really with the development, and asking whether we're at beta test stage at the moment. I think I can probably answer that in actual fact. All of these products, and indeed the webinar 2, we have orders from people for all of them, and they're all at sort of various stages, I think, at the moment. Analytics, I think it's just probably fair to say we have a beta tester or a beta test site, and that is the stage that we're up to. Yeah. Another technical question, so I think this is one for you, Pascalis. Sorry, Kevin, didn't mean anything by that.
That's okay.
Looks like Bootstrap. If so, just wondering the version and if it will be updated in line with the official Bootstrap releases.
Yes, it does work with HTML5 and Bootstrap. I'm not, don't have the actual version in hand, but we are using the seal report system, which is an open source underlying system, and we're just going to be following the updates of that system and updating analytics.
Okay, I think last question, Kevin. Somebody has asked about the process for installing analytics and what Telepen will need to do and what will be required of the institution.
Pascalis, can you start that, and I'll chip in at the end.
Well, technically, the installation entails a web server, so you're going to need to have a web server running on your premises or anywhere else you like, on a cloud, virtual machine, whatever, depending on your installation. And that web server will have the analytics application, needs to have access to the actual database, the Juno database, to connect to it and report from it. So it's basically a web server and like IIS, meaning web server, an IIS installation on one of your servers.
Okay, shall I just squeeze one more question in, and then we'll perhaps move on. One question: will this run reports in relation to room booking function within Juno?
Yeah, absolutely. The all the room booking data is actually in the same database. There's a single database, so it will, and you could incorporate access control and room booking into one report if you want to as well. Yeah, very straightforward.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Right, thank you. So that ends Juno Analytics.